Venat was not a destroyer, she was a savior. The Sundering was no accident, it was a wound stitched to stop Etheirys' ascension. What did she witness? A future where the void's hunger devoured all light, where time itself unraveled under entropy's reign. To prevent that end, a world had to die. The cost was too great, yet the alternative was worse. The aims and the option. The final days begin with Hydaelyn's descent. Civilizations burn. Despair becomes a force as tangible as light. If Venat's vision holds, the Sundering was no tragedy, but a bulwark against a future where Etheirys' ascension would unravel time itself. What horror did she witness? A world where entropy reigns, where the Convocation's purpose was never unity but extinction. The rejoining is not a restoration but a scar, a testament to what was sacrificed to delay the inevitable. The final days are not an end, they are a countdown, and the cost of that delay, a god's death, a world's end. A debt no scale could bear. The Convocation's seer did not weep when she foresaw the end. Venat Azim's voice in Elpis twilight wove through sundered reflections a time-warp's thread to a future unspooled. What did she find there? A cosmos devoured by Etheirys' ascension. Not a god but a void, not conquest but entropy's slow unmaking. The Astral Pattern's data whispers of it, a timeline where light bends to darkness, where existence frays at the seam. The Sundering then was no rash act, it was a dam against a flood, a world's end to save a greater end. The cost, a god's death, the debt, a civilization's erasure. Yet the pattern's echoes leave a question. If Venat's vision was true, what of the reflections she ignored? The sundered threads that led elsewhere, elsewhen. The answer lies not in Elpis stars, but in the silence between them. And the silence is vast. The silence between stars holds a name. Venat, her hand did not tremble when the Convocation split. She did not choose Hydaelyn over Zodiark, she chose the Sundering. The summoning of Hydaelyn was not salvation, it was a blade. A calculated gambit to shatter Etheirys' ascension before it began. The Astral Pattern's data does not lie. 14 shards, 14 fractures. Each a scar, each a prison. Etheirys' rise was not a possibility, it was a certainty, unless the world became unwhole. Venat saw the final frame of the pattern, a sky devoured by entropy, the ancients not as guardians but as ghosts, hollow. Hollowed by their own hubris, to survive the final days they would have to become something monstrous, something that could not be unmade. Venat's defiance was not courage, it was arithmetic. She traded a world for 1,000 tomorrows. The cost is written in every crumbling city, in every soul who bears the mark of the split. The Convocation begged her to complete the sacrifice, to become a thread in the tapestry. She refused, not for glory, not for gods. For the future that whispered in the pattern's silence, a future where Etheirys' hunger would not outlast the stars. What did Venat see that made her accept the role of executioner? The answer lies not in the Sundering itself, but in the horror it buried, and that horror still breathes. The clue lies in a patch note's whisper, a raid tome's footnote. The Ascians did not mend Etheirys, they shattered it further. By forcing a reflection's rejoining, they unchained Zodiark's prison, a god of entropy reborn. The Astral Pattern's equations, once unresolved, now scream a truth. Etheirys' collapse was never avoidable, only postponable. Until the Ascians' hubris became the spark, their solution fed the very collapse they feared. Venat's Sundering was not a failure. It was a dam against a flood the Ascians made inevitable. They believed they could outrun prophecy. Instead, they became its footnotes. The equations showed a future where Etheirys devoured its own light, a hollow shell ruling over dead stars. Venat saw it. Saw the Ascians rejoining as the first crack. Her choice was not to save a world. To unmake it before its death could spread, the cost, a price no ledger holds. But what god is ever accounted for in numbers? The Ascians, in their arrogance, carved the path they swore to prevent. Their project was not a mistake, it was the catalyst. And Venat, the only hand sharp enough to sever the thread before the tapestry unraveled entirely. The Astral Pattern's unresolved equations were no mere abstraction, they were a prophecy. A mathematical premonition of a future where Etheirys' ascension did not merely unravel Etheirys, but devoured the tapestry of all existence. Venat saw this horizon. She did not shatter the world in desperation. she fractured it with precision. 14 shards, 14 trials. Ancients reborn as mortals, their divine threads severed to starve the entropy Etheirys would sow. The Sundering was no failure. It was a test, a proving ground where survival demanded suffering, where Hydaelyn's light, not Ancient's power, became the shield. Every soul reborn across those shards carried the weight of that design. Their fragility was the weapon. A future where gods fell, but humanity endured. The equations Venat deciphered did not warn of Etheirys' end. They mapped the collapse of every timeline where Etheirys ascended. His hunger was not confined to crystal or sky. It would have unraveled stars, swallowed voids, turned creation itself into ash. To prevent this, Venat did not merely break a world. She broke a law, the law that gods are eternal. Her blade was the only cure, the cost. A civilization's worth of souls, their divinity drowned in flesh. But what is sacrifice if not the price of a future? The Astral Pattern's silence was not ignorance, it was a ledger, a record of the only war where victory meant erasing the victor. And in that ledger, Venat's name is etched not as savior, but as the wound that healed the wound. The cost of the Sundering carved its name in bone and starlight. Venat's vision did not promise balance, it demanded annihilation, to birth a god who could bear the weight of annihilation. The Ancients, untempered by trial, would have cracked under the final day's crushing void. Their suffering was not waste, it was the forge. Without Hydaelyn's sundered heart to anchor the astral sea, Etheirys' entropy would have devoured not just a world, but the memory of its longing. The pattern's cold math reveals no alternative. The untested could not survive what came next. Every shattered soul, every stolen breath, was a debt paid to a future where light still had a chance to burn. And yet the question gnaws. What horror did Venat glimpse beyond the veil, so vast it made a goddess willing to let her own creation bleed? The answer lies in the silence between the stars. Venat's vision was no warning, it was a blueprint. The Sundering fractured Etheirys' ascent, the only path to starve entropy its godhood. 14 shards splintered from her essence, each a cage of light and shadow, source and reflections born from Venat's blade. The Astral Pattern's equations etch this truth. Without her strike, Etheirys' hunger would have unraveled the loom of time itself. No mortal hand could have wielded this act. Venat cleaved the world, reducing ancients to fragile flesh, their power diluted across shards. The cost is carved into every breath of every age since, yet the math holds. Without the Sundering, the final days would have been Etheirys' coronation, not her undoing. The silence between stars whispers her name. Not as villain, not as savior, only as architect of the impossible. She saw the future bleed into entropy and chose to let creation bleed instead. The ledger closes here. 14 worlds, 14 chains on a god. The equations do not lie. The Sundering was no mistake. It was the only arithmetic that added to survival. The Sundering did not erase the indit, postpone the Reaper's knock. The seventh umbral calamity was not a disaster but a harbinger, its entropy a shadow of the greater rot Venat foresaw. The Dragonsong War, fought to seal a god, became a thread in a larger tapestry, a war that ensured Etheirys never ascended to unmake all. The Scions love their bonds, their defiance are not mere memories. They are echoes of a force that outlived the stars, proof that even death can be outlasted. What did Venat see to justify such sacrifice? A future where Etheirys, unchained, became the architect of oblivion. A world where the final days arrived not as a climax but a sigh. The cycle was never meant to end. It was meant to breathe, to pause, to wait. Endwalker's victory was a breath held. Dawntrail's dawn is a choice to breathe again, but the clock's gears still turn. The equations still demand a sum. The Scions' legacy is a paradox, their love a weapon against time, their bonds a firewall against entropy, yet the cycle remains. The chains are looser now, the path wider, but will the next hands know what the last did? Will they choose to burn the math or rewrite it? Venat's vision was not mercy, it was arithmetic, and the next chapter. It is a variable still unresolved. The Astral Pattern's unresolved equations whisper of a deeper threat. What if Venat's arithmetic left variables unsolved? The Sundering's cost was astronomical, but was its logic absolute? Etheirys rise as entropy's sovereign, could another path have averted that fate? The ledger of Scions is not sealed. Your theory may fracture the foundation, prove the pattern incomplete. The future Venat burned, was it the only fire? Share your reckoning below, the math is waiting. The Astral Pattern's unresolved equations whisper of a deeper threat. What if Venat's arithmetic left variables unsolved? The Sundering's cost was astronomical, but was its logic absolute? Etheirys rise as entropy's sovereign, could another path have averted that fate? The ledger of Scions is not sealed. Your theory may fracture the foundation, prove the pattern incomplete. The future